I'll choose my words carefully, find you a home on a park bench by the sea. Seagulls gather overhead, spend the night with the stars and rain. I'm actually Jeremy Serwer, and this is Buckley. He lives here at the house. He's in management. My mother played piano, and I would hear that in growing up. So she would play weird stuff. Probably before I was telling you how I grew up with atheist, parents. Basically, she would play things like Jesus Christ Superstar and these weird, like, sort of, songs. I'm like, I wasn't particularly attracted to like the songs, but the piano playing was fascinating. Like, I loved hearing. And she also would play like a lot of classical music, and so I was like, oh, this is wonderful. And then I put my hands on a piano, and it was awful. I convinced her to get me a drum set, and it was from Toys R Us. And it was literally, the kick drum was like this high, and it's just the kind of kit you can buy for your kid. And I destroyed that. And then I found that she had a nylon string guitar, and I started sort of messing around with that, terribly, And so I think I officially started when I was maybe around 9 years old, and it was mostly just as a guitar player trying to take lessons in a small town in northern Wisconsin, where the place that taught me went out of business because music was not a priority there. The 20 plus years of playing has sort of created whatever that I'm doing, which sort of runs across blues and jazz and I guess what you call folk and Americana. How about a room with a view? Maybe something overlooking a landfill. Gag while you're breathing in the air, sparking every urge to tear the fabric of this sour affair. We won't miss you here. In '99, I was in a number of bands, Moondog being the first kind of a serious band that I was in, and we did it. We put out a couple of 3-song EPs. We mostly just used as demos, but we sold them too. Actually, I had cassette tapes. And then I was in another band called Rich Man's Burden, which was kind of my first official project. I was in a band called Acoustic Minds, and we kind of went into some better studios. Luckily, I've been asked enough times in the past to where I got to see the insides of some nicer places that I would never get to go on my own. As far as my stuff that I've put out, FM came out in 2008. It was done down in Portland. And I did a record up here called Roads when I moved back to Seattle. And then another record I did down in Portland later that summer called Face Down. And then I finally was doing my own recording and put out In the Hour of Our Lords, which is definitely a very activist-based record. It was my tribute to the non-human animal species and just any plants, whatever, protozoans, one-celled organisms, anything that was not a human. It was my tribute to them for surviving. And it sounds awfully misanthropic, and maybe in some ways it sort of is. But it was my tribute to them for surviving the human animal. And then my final record is another activist. It's sort of from a more of an economic standpoint, called Finding New Homes for the Wealthy. And that was done in a very small room in Ravenna, like a tiny room where nothing should be recorded, but we did it. So that one's all about the financial world and just, wealth over people and all the rest of those kinds of things. Sleep by the tree, never alone with the freeway, echoing clouds above, clouds within. The clouds are surrounding lot about social issues and politics and justice, social justice. I don't know, those are the things that I feel the most strongly about. I like to kind of hone in on a community or a statewide issue and sing about it. That's the kind of stuff that gets under my skin and, makes me want to write a song. I feel like we're in a time again. We're back, we're in a time that reflects the 1960s, all these wars and all the ecological catastrophes that are taking place and all of these things that are happening. But I just don't, in a lot of ways, I'm really feeling sad that more people are not feeling inspired. And they're out there, I know that they are. But I feel like musicians are really scared to broach those topics because, I'm going to alienate 50% of my, listening audience when I decide that these are the things that I want to discuss. And I'm not putting myself above anybody in this way, but I just feel like I'm free to sing about whatever I want to. There's never going to be a shortage of that material. It's just absolutely, one thing after another. Finding new homes for the wealthy? Yeah, I love to talk about that. So that is a song, and it just kind of really sums up a lot of my philosophy of just about wealth and how we view it. And I've read some studies. There was a psychologist out there, his last name is Puff, and he did a number of studies on empathy and the wealthy. And he found that, and him and the other researchers had found that wealthy people, and we're talking about folks in the upper millions and in the billions, they have no concept of how the rest of us live, and they have no idea, they don't have any empathy for us. They can't put themselves in our shoes. They actually, the way that they act, they did a number of studies and it's kind of a strange thing, but they took people's cars, what they were driving, they're driving something obviously costs over $100,000, and they were set up at a cross section where people are walking through the crosswalk, and more often than not, people who drove these higher end vehicles were not looking people in the eye. They were pulling through and basically putting people in harm's way with their vehicle. And it, I think that just speaks to the entitlement. And I think that's what the song is just can we, if we could take these people, jump them out of their shoes and put them in the shoes of the rest of the folks, and just give them a really good dose of this is how it looks, this is how it works, and then put them back, and what would that do for them? Would that change the way that they view things? Would they, how would they live their lives from there on out? I gotta say, there's a little bit more dark, brutal side to that too. To the title, there was as I was growing up, I was a big punk rock fan, and there was these shirts in the magazines that I would read, whether it was Flipside Fanzine or Maximum Rock and Roll, and it was finding new homes for the rich, and on that same thing there was a graveyard. So it was kind of wow. I'm I don't know if I want to take it that far, but it definitely sends, that was an image and a message that stuck with me for over 30 years. And I'm I want to kind of steal that, and I did. There's a whole lot more to it that I could go into, and if I run into any folks that see this and they want me to talk about it more, or they have things to say about it, we'll have a great conversation, and we can get into more of it later. Pack your bags for the time of your life, because you can't take it with you when you die 6 feet to the swaying grass above, sleeping with the only thing you love. I got out of my last full-time job 7 years ago, when I was a social worker. I worked with street kids, and I worked with at-risk youth, and drop-in centers, and I worked even in an office space at my last job, working with education retention for homeless students down in Tucson, and I worked in psychiatric placements for youth as well, which was pretty scary places to be for those kids. And I did that for 12 years, and then I went to more full-time music 7 years ago, and now I'm like the last 2 months I've averaged like 18 gigs a month. I never in any stretch of my imagination ever thought that I would be in a house that was owned by someone that I was married to. Or I lived in a place in Portland that was a dirt floor. I've lived in my vehicle for 3 weeks. And people, I know a lot of musicians that have suffered far more than I have. Some of the gigs that I've taken, I think are in places that, and I don't want to name names, and I can't because, but I think some of my peers might look down their nose at me like, you did what? You played where? And it's the unfortunate thing of paying the bills, but it happens, and there's a little bit of selling out in all of us, I guess, when it comes to putting food on the table. It's kind of weird. I've been going back to like what I was thinking and doing when I was 13, and it's weird how many of the things that I've come back to. But I think the recent election cycles and a lot of that stuff where it's really, there's no, in my head, any denying it anymore that there's any semblance of real democracy in this country anymore. And that, of course, is a major influence on the music that I play. But when I was 13, I was an anarchist, and now I'm at this age, and I'm an anarchist, for the last 10 years again. So I'll turn 46 tomorrow, and I feel like I know less and less about the human existence. Passenger, we won't miss you here. Yeah. La 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 la. La 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 la.